Everybody, and welcome to the Provincial Office webinar. I hope you're all safe and well. My name's Andrew Rydell and I am the Provincial Deputy Ground Secretary. To today's session, Stuart Cranage has been speaking to lots of groups and doing presentations with lots of lodges with regards to the new membership pathway and the rollout and developing lodge plans, etc. We thought it would be useful for him to be here today to go through an example plan and give an idea of some of the thinking that could go into behind it. So Stuart, I'll hand straight over to you and you can just crack on with things.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, well, hopefully we are all seeing that. The background was at last week's provincial Zoom meeting. There were a number of questions asked about runway. People were finding some of the lodge plans complicated, misleading. They weren't sure why they were being asked to do them. And I naively volunteered to Andrew at some time in the future to give a quick talk on an example of a lodge plan. Sounds an easy thing to do, but what a challenge it's proved, Bradon, because obviously the plan for your lodge is very unique to yourselves. But what I want to do is kind of explain why you're being asked to do it, the type of things that you can consider in developing your plan, and what the benefits will be to your lodge. I do need to set a little bit of background, of course, as well, on what the runway strategy is all about, so that you can fit all of this planning into the context of the runway project and into the context of the members' pathway structure. So the first thing I'll say is that if you consider the provincial strategy is appropriate to your lodge, and if you want to opt into the strategy, your very first step, irrespective of what comes next, is to prepare and agree a lodge plan. Let me just emphasize what I'm saying at the top there. If you consider the provincial strategy is appropriate to your lodge, there are two immediate lodges I can think of, or types of lodges. A past masters lodge is never going to do an initiation. They have got a regular supply of potential members. When people come out the chair, if they are interested in joining a past masters lodge, they're going to go there. And there are a few, and thankfully a minority of lodges, who for their own good reason are perfectly happy the way they are. There may be a lodge of elderly gentlemen who've been there for many, many years and are quite happy to see their time out and let their lodge follow its natural course. And I think the important thing here, and I'm hoping I persuade you all that it is worthwhile, but this is not mandatory for your lodge, but there are significant advantages in going ahead and supporting the runway strategy. So we're saying prepare and agree a lodge plan. It basically comprises of a number of parts. It's a lodge profile. Is there anything unique about your lodge? Are you a collection of people in a specific profession or a specific career? Do you have any special community interest? Maybe you're all keen on fishing, caravanning, shooting, bowling, whatever. A top level summary, which, if it's appropriate, may include your age profile. For example, if your lodge, if the youngest is 80 and the oldest is 90, it may not be appropriate to consider introducing a candidate age 25 into that lodge. He may not feel party to it, and the members might not feel overly receptive, unless, of course, it's a son or grandson, in which case it might be highly appropriate. As part of that top level summary, attendance. How many people do you get there? What are your meeting dates and times? For example, if you are a daytime lodge or a Saturday lodge, that's pretty unique. And that could be a real interesting factor for somebody who is interested in becoming a Freemason. Some lodges hold socials every single month and involve all the family. Other lodges might just have a ladies' night or a ladies' weekend, and that's it. And apart from the raffle and the occasional fundraising. What are we expecting in terms of the involvement of any candidate comes there, and how much is it going to cost them? Because the lodges vary very much from initiation fees. A quick review of the current practices of your lodge, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats that are stopping your lodge moving forward. And in very simplistic terms, it's a basic plan to improve your lodges or chapters' chances of survival in these horrible COVID times and the horrible times that we're going through with decline in membership in general. So really, it's a provincial strategy with the aim of introducing to your lodge new members. And if you think, brethren, traditionally, our route of bringing people in has been the good old-fashioned proposer and seconder. But when we come and look at the decline in Freemasonry and why we're needing to do this, we'll soon realise that we cannot rely on that method alone. We've got to have something to seriously supplement it. You may consider a profile, a simple profile of what your lodge's ideal candidate might look like. You might have something unique in your lodge that you really want to see that specific quality in any candidate that's introduced to you. And above all, we need to be prepared to change the way that we currently work. There are going to be some new concepts here which are going to be alien to your lodge, and they're not anything to worry about, but most people are usually resistant to a change of any kind, especially if the way it's always been done that way in this lodge for the last 50 years. I said I need to set into context. You know, you're being asked, you don't, or you're being told that you do not have to subscribe to this initiative, this strategy. But let me just spend a few minutes to explain what is it all about and how's it working. Well, first of all, our Deputy Provincial Grand Master is responsible for its implementation. And every single assistant has been charged with liaising with group chairman to understand the intention of those lodges for which they are responsible. So the key message here, brethren, is this is being driven from the top, and it has the full support from the very top down through the group chairman, down to the individual groups. And if the lodges opt for that new strategy, then there will be people in the group. There will be myself as provincial mentor. There'll be Neil Ward as provincial membership officer. We will be there to give you support, to give you guidance, to give you advice as you go along the way. Lodges not wishing to adopt a new strategy are free to make that choice. You will be disadvantaged, but you are free to make that choice if you genuinely feel that you're quite happy to carry on as you are. So what is the strategy? Well, it's all about maximizing marketing, social media, publicity within the community to show and dispel all those ridiculous myths that have existed about Freemasonry. A great example that will do us great publicity in the community, for example, is the recent food bank initiative. Find it very heartening when I look at all the group web pages at photo after photo of stacks and stacks of stuff. And if that gets out in the community, that is inevitably going to generate interest in Freemasonry. It's structured in 3 tiers, ages 18 to 30, up to 50, and 50 and over. And the reason for that tier structuring is twofold. First of all, people in those categories will have very different motives for joining Freemasonry. The 18 to 30-year-olds are highly likely to be attracted because of the social element, or maybe because their father or an uncle was a member of a lodge, or maybe because they already have a friend who's in there, who's been extolling the virtues of Freemasonry. Those up to 50, they're going to have a slightly different interest. They're perhaps more interested in mixing with like-minded people. Maybe they're interested in the ritual side of it or the Masonic history of it. But the way to market to those people and the message we give about what Freemasonry is very different for someone aged 18 to 50 than the message will be for someone aged 18 to 30. And then we've got the over 50-year-olds. So these are going to be people that have either retired or perhaps looking forward to a retirement, are going to have some time on their hands, and Freemasonry might be a great way that it can keep them engaged with people, get them involved in the community, and give them something to do with that free time. So that's the strategy in a nutshell. And the whole objective is to bring to your lodges qualified, verified, genuine people who are interested in Freemasonry. But of course, to do that, we've got to know a bit about you, a bit about your lodge, and we've got to be happy that it's going to be a good home for them. A members pathway is considered considered an integral part of this runway strategy. I'll draw your attention to the bottom left-hand side of this slide, bringing together the roles of marketing, membership, mentoring, and retrieval. And that's what it's all about. We don't want to get members in at all costs. We want to get quality people in who are going to stay the duration of Freemasonry. We need to make sure that once we've got them there, we nurture them, we make Freemasonry enjoyable for them, and we look after them and develop them. And unfortunately, it is inevitable that we are going to lose some people. So we've also got to make sure that we've got a sound method of retrieving those people that we've lost. I apologize for those that have seen this graph before, but I think it very, very clearly puts into perspective the potential dilemma we are in. And it's not just our province. This is across the whole of the UK.
Stuart, sorry, just to butt in. There are some, on sharing a screen, there are some grey boxes which are covering some of the information.
Oh.
Can you just unshare your screen?
Yeah.
And then just reshare it with just the application, because I think it's the Zoom controls which we can see grayed out on your screen. But if you can share it as just the application, the PowerPoint, as opposed to sharing the whole screen, if you see what I mean.
Okay, I should be able to do that. Bear with me a minute. Right, let's try again then. Can we see that now?
Yes, that's that. Yeah, if you just put that full screen, we should be able to see it. Yeah.
Now, how do we put that full screen? Because I only have a fit to window. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Right, so this explains the dilemma that we are in. If we look at that graph, that peaked around the 1980s. And from 1980 until the year 2000, we lost over 120,000 Freemasons over a 5-year period. The reason we lost them actually illustrates really very well how powerful use of media and communication with the public is. The reason we lost those people was instigated by that book. It's a book called The Brotherhood, and it was written by Stephen Knight. And that book condemned Freemasonry. We were devil worshippers. Everybody in the police, the government, the court service, anybody who was a senior business exec was out to create a new world order. And because it was a compelling read, a lot of the public bought it. And a lot of people in the City of London in particular were forced to make a decision. Do I jeopardize my job or do I leave Freemasonry? And for no justifiable reason whatsoever, an awful lot of them left Freemasonry. And the reason I mention that is it proves the power of getting the communications right. And that's why we're spending time with Runway with getting the marketing messages correct. Also look at the bottom graph. We've got an ever-growing market of eligible people out there that we can bring into Freemasonry, and we're not getting our market share of it. And Project Runway is all about trying to address that. Now, my screen is frozen now, Andrew, and it won't let me scroll forward. Thank you. Perhaps if we can just set in context Runway in our province. We are the biggest province under the jurisdiction of the United Grand Lodge of England. We have 334 lodges. We have about 9,900 members, which represents about 7,700 individuals, because some are members of more than one lodge. If you were to bring an external marketing person in, we have 113 lodges of less than 20 people. And an external marketing guy would probably say, there's your problem. But the reality is that's not the problem. Small lodges have more pros than cons. They tend to work very closely with other small lodges in their group. They tend to be very generous when it comes to giving away insulation, and they tend to be the first and the most supportive of any provincial initiatives. The real challenge that we face, and this is why Runway has been launched when it was, because a lot of people say, why are we launching this strategy in the middle of a global pandemic? It takes time. But crunch time for our province will come on the 31st of December, when there are 128 lodges in our province, which, had we been meeting as normal, would have resulted in 128 insulation returns. What that means in plain language is there will be 128 treasurers sending out reminders to their membership. How many of those brethren are going to willingly renew their membership when they perhaps haven't met since February or March? So there's one challenge, which is why we need to start now to plug a potentially unknown gap. What is the Runway project? Well, it's basically a series of, I'll call it web-based forms, but it's a basic system that will track all enquiry management, will make sure that the events happen in a timely manner, make sure that they are correctly allocated, and if it results in a Form P, great. If it doesn't result in a Form P, why? Maybe he's gone to another province, maybe he's straddled the line, for example, between West Lancs and East Lancs. But let's not just write them off as we've lost them. So lodges wishing to partake, I've said you need to develop a lodge profile and a lodge plan. And I'll draw your attention to the bottom line. And this time scale may slip a little bit, subject to COVID and various other things, but full implementation scheduled for April 2021. So what are we being asked to do? Well, we're being asked to create a basic lodge profile. We're being asked to develop a lodge succession plan, and we're asked to develop a lodge development plan. And if I'm honest, brethren, you can make these as simple or as complex as you wish. I have seen some fantastic documents that run to 6 pages or more, and I've seen some very concise documents that might just run to 1.5 pages. It's all about how concise you want to make it, but making sure that you get the important points in. Well, why are you being asked to do all this? Well, first of all, it's an essential step to make the provincial runway strategy work. Already said, our decline in numbers cannot be addressed slowly via the traditional proposer and seconder approach. And besides, we've mostly exhausted our proposer approach anyway, because it tends to be our newer members that propose their friends once they've come in. If we're not getting newer members, we're also losing that trend of proposers. When I said before, we've got to accept change and we've got to be prepared to accept change. Future candidates will more than likely be unknown to lodge members. And likewise, the lodge will not be known to that potential candidate. A provincial team will receive, assess, and validate enquiries to join Freemasonry. And I try to put it in plain English terms, a lodge profile puts your name in the hat, so to speak, to be considered. So if province have qualified that this guy is a genuine person, meets all the required criteria, so all that stuff that your lodge would normally go through, that's going to be done for you. The lodge succession plan, that's all about making sure that you have got some kind of rolling line of succession for the next few years in your lodge. We've all been there, I'm sure, when you've been at an insulation meeting, and lo and behold, somebody on the night finds out that they're going to be the inner guard, or someone finds out that they're going to be a steward. So part of the lodge succession plan is not just about identifying problems before they occur. It's eliminating the surprises or the disappointment that they're not going to be there where they would like to be. It prevents alienation. We don't progress people too quick. We don't progress them too slow, or we don't overlook lodge members. We don't overlook the potential. We lose people in the province because we suddenly put them in a position in the lodge that they don't feel ready to do. And we also lose people because we've got incredibly enthusiastic people who are very disappointed that it's going to take them all those years before they get to the big chair. So the Lodge Plan. The purpose of the Lodge Plan is to identify what your lodge is strong at, what your lodge is weak at, what opportunities might you have that you're currently not pursuing, and what are the threats to the welfare and well-being of your lodge. In essence, the Lodge Plan will look at what you can stop doing and what you want to continue doing. But more importantly, it will identify things that you could start doing now for the good and the welfare of your lodge. And there's every chance, brethren, that this may be the first time in many years that as a whole lodge, pushed by the dilemma of losing membership and COVID, it might be the whole time in many, many years that your whole lodge gets together and discusses your lodge's future. It will also instill confidence within the provincial team that your lodge is appropriate to receive potential candidates. Because the argument could go, why should province invest good money in marketing campaigns? Why should they invest their time in interviewing and talking with these people and qualifying them if a potential lodge to give them to hasn't got a basic plan that will ensure the encouragement and the development and the welcoming of that person, and that the lodge has a suitable future for that candidate? So that's why we're looking at the Lodge Plan. Lodge profile. I've got a whole load of things here. These are all genuine things that lodges, when they've gone out, and a lot of them have just done it via an email, what do you think is either unique or you like about our lodge that may interest other people? And you can see the range of things there. A diverse age profile, solemn in the ceremonies when it's appropriate, light-hearted when it's appropriate. They support many charities. They do loads of socials. They might have common interests. There's one there, many members meet up on fishing trips. The members of the lodge, just the guys, get together for a beer and a chat once in a while. Their wives and partners are actively engaged in the socials. It might be something as simple as plenty of free parking at the Masonic Hall. It might be as simple as we're very close to the railway station. It's easy walking distance. Wheelchair or easy access to the lodge room and dining. One of the lodges, they have their start time flexible to suit the work requirements on the day of its members. And they will agree at a committee meeting, probably a couple of days before, that that lodge is going to start at 4 o'clock because everyone can make that. And if people are traveling and they're working away, they'll start at 6:30 to accommodate them. Many lodges pride themselves in the fact they have a whole wide variety of business interests, plumbers to accountants to solicitors. And the list carries on and on. Some lodges are prepared to take the chance and are willing to let members pay monthly. Many lodges have regular attendance, and if there's nothing happening, they'll always get a guest speaker. So you're never just turning up to have the lodge open and close. Some of them love the fact that all the events are family friendly. Others celebrate, for example, Founders Night, make a big event of the anniversary of Founders Night. Organising visits to adjacent provinces. Bowling, maybe the lodge is so many years old, maybe it gets regular visits by senior provincial officers. Maybe they like the use that they make maximum use of technology. So there's a whole range of things there. And probably the easiest way is an email out from the secretary and ask the membership of your lodge, what do you think would make our lodge stand out in a very, very simple profile? And what I've suggested, and what lodges, if they get too many of these things come back, well, rate them. Rate the most important, rate them 1 to 5, however you want to do it. Pick out the most important. And it may be that some of the points can be combined as 1 point. So, for example, out of that list, I may have decided I've picked these 6 out. It's excellent food at the festive board. We have regularly well attended and maybe every month social events that involve the whole family. We're flexible with our start times to suit the business. We support many charities. The younger brethren love the use of technology. They love the WhatsApp, the use of Facebook, the use of Twitter, etc. And it's a broad age profile and a very varied business work. So they're not specific about the background or the age profile or anything, about the person that comes to their lodge. Having got all those things, we need to consider grouping them under some profile headings. And this is really down to you, to what you think suits you best. But the most common themes are the detail of the meeting, your venue, the date and the time. So the second Thursday of every month, typically at 6 o'clock at such and such a Masonic Hall. How much will it cost someone to be initiated into your lodge? And how much will the annual subscriptions be? What do you do for your catering? You know, if you're blessed with a Masonic Hall that has a very high standard of catering, bring that out. If you go to an external venue, bring that out. Your lodge might meet at a golf club. You might not be one that meets at a Masonic Hall. If you're meeting at a unique venue, Wootton Golf Club, for example, that's quite unique. That should be on your lodge profile. Something about your membership. As I say, if age is important, if the backgrounds and the interests are important, bring it out. Emphasize your social. Not everybody joins Freemasonry for the social, but if your lodge is really keen on socials, and that's a big thing with your members, that should be captured in your profile. Some people join Freemasonry because their grandfather, their uncle, their great-grandfather was a Freemason, and they're interested in the historic thing. So if your lodge has something interesting historically, it might just be that you've got a lodge centenary coming up, or it might be that in the history, in your particular group, your lodge played a major part in one thing or another. And other things you might wish to consider is something, for example, about rehearsals, practices, maybe even a very simple pen picture. What might your ideal candidate profile look like? Here's a very simple example, and this is probably about the simplest you can get. Your lodge meets at such and such a Masonic Hall on the first Thursday, September through to May at 6 o'clock. Your lodge consists of 28 members spanning the age groups of 32 to 91. It's going to cost anyone joining your lodge £225 a year. You hold 4 or 5 socials each year. Everyone's welcome, Masons and non-Masons alike. You might have particular interest of rugby or craft beers. You support 7 local charities, and this particular lodge happens to be 110 years old. That is the simplest of a lodge profile that you can do, and it meets the criteria. It gives the basic information out about your lodge. You may wish to present it more in this way, and some people, as I've said, have kind of stretched it over a couple of pages. Well, if you bear in mind the typical headings before, you know, the meeting details, the dining, the age profile, social events, historic information. How you present it is down to you. You do whatever you're most comfortable with, whichever is the easiest to compile. Now, why is this lodge profile important? Well, I mentioned at the start that the Runway Initiative is aimed at 3 tiers of age group, and it's done for the reason that they have different interests, and our marketing message is going to be different. So what I've tried to show here, and I literally did this 3 minutes before I joined the call, it was a very last minute addition, but I think it's important because it's a point that I think has been misunderstood. We've got these 3 age profiles through whatever marketing initiative it may be. That might result in a click on a website somewhere. It may result in a phone call or an email. The thing is, it's going to be a person in that particular age profile. And there's only so far you can go by clicking and pointing or exchanging emails. They've got to, at some time, speak with a human being on a phone or meet with a human being when all this lockdown and COVID is finally calmed down. The important point is that somebody aged 18 to 30 will be put in contact with a volunteer from the province who is also aged 18 to 30. Like mindsets, same motives in Freemasonry, can relate to what that person may be able to relate to. We don't want someone aged 50 talking to an 80-year-old, right? Many will argue that there shouldn't be that much difference in the perception, but in their personal life, someone aged 18 to 30 will understand that person's priorities, just married, big mortgage, progressing in their career, etc. Same for the 30 to 50-year-olds. They can express what they get out of Freemasonry in a way that that age profile will relate to. And the same for those aged 50. And I think that's very important, because I think people were concerned that they're going to go somewhere as a result of a marketing campaign, click a link, and the next thing they're going to be past a candidate. This is where the profiles come in. That person that they speak with can then, they might identify immediately that it's appropriate, for example, to a specific group, or they may be sat midway between two Masonic halls, which are two different groups. It would help them no end if they have a profile to match that individual against a lodge that seems to be an appropriate fit. And I'd like to bring out here, when I said before about lodges can opt out of this initiative if they want, and people often ask me, Stuart, will I be discriminated against if I opt out? And the answer is no, you won't be discriminated against. If you are genuinely the best fit for this candidate, and that might be difficult to do without a profile, your group chairman may still direct that potential candidate to your lodge. You will, however, be at a significant disadvantage, because there could be other lodges in your group or in an adjacent group who have done a profile, and therefore they might be an easier sell to this potential candidate. So you might be disadvantaged as where someone on face value would have been a natural pointer for your lodge. If you haven't done a profile, your name isn't in the hat for consideration. So there's the value of doing the profile. The value of doing the plan, which I'll go on to in a minute, is having spent that time within the province, they need to be assured that if they hand a qualified candidate to you on a plate, that you have got the most basic of measures in place to nurture, develop, support, and keep that guy happy, and prove to him that he has a future, that the lodge has a future, and that he has a future role to play in it. So that moves us nicely on to lodge succession plan. It's a real dead easy piece of work, guys, and it will solve so many problems before they occur. If you look at your lodge today, you will probably find people in those positions, the DC, the treasurer, the chaplain, the almoner, the charity steward, the mentor, have probably accepted that role, expecting to do it for many, many years. You don't typically accept a secretary or a treasurer just for 1 year. You usually accept it probably for a minimum of 3, typically 5. So that's the first part, the first half of your lodge succession plan. That's done. And if you share this with those guys, for example, the director of ceremonies may turn around and say, you know, I've done it for 8 years already. I'll do it for 2 more. But in 2023, I would like to step down from DC and take a well-earned break. But at least he's seen this, and you're not waiting until the week of your installation when he then says at the last minute, I don't want to be DC anymore. Get it out there for all to see, and they can chip in their 10 penneth now. Where you need the special attention is in the progressive officers. This is where we lose people because they don't go as quick as they would like, or they suddenly find themselves heading for the big chair and they weren't prepared for it. So how do we start it off? Well, we take a snapshot for where we're going to be in 2021, which, given the current environment and the dilemma we've been through with COVID, there's probably every chance that that's going to be the same guys that are in office now. They're probably just going to continue as is. When we come to the next year, everybody shuffles up one. So you can see Stuart, who was senior warden in 2021, is now expected to be worshipful master. The same for the senior warden, the junior warden, and the deacons. Everybody's shuffled up one. We move forward to 2023, shuffled up one again. 2024, 2025. And you can see that as we're shuffling people up on the basis that they are happy to do that, We've now got these question marks creeping in, where there is no obvious natural progression to fill that slot. So we either need to look at, do we recycle people? Hopefully we'll start getting some initiatives in and we can consider doing that. But more importantly, if I take my namesake, Stuart, for example, Stuart is shown as being Worshipful Master in 2022. And me being awkward, I might say, I can't be Worshipful Master in 2022. My daughter's getting married and I've got loads of family coming over from Australia and I'm going to be far too busy. I can't be Master. At least I'm shouting out now, 18 months in advance, instead of suddenly finding myself Master-elect and then saying in the meeting, I'm sorry, guys, I can't do it. So enter William. Now, the fact that William has stepped up to the mark might be a past Master. He can either do it as a one-off and Stuart can disappear off into the sunset, or we have to reshuffle the subsequent years. The key thing is everybody can see where they are expected to be over the next 5 years. If it's not fast enough for them, they can sing out. If it's too fast for them, they can ring the alarm bells. It's all about eliminating surprises and living up to people's personal expectations. And straight away, there's our problem areas. It might be that we approach another lodge in our group and say, we'll pay for your festive board, but we would like you to be senior deacon for the year because we've got a gap that we can't fill. Or you might choose to recycle somebody, but you've got time to think ahead and plan about it now. Don't forget these guys. We had Jim and John as stewards for the next 5 years. Now, are they quite happy to be stewards for the next 5 years? Maybe they're there because they don't turn up at the practices or they don't turn up at the rehearsals. Maybe they'd never put their hand up in the air to say, I'd like to deliver the working tools, or I'd like to do a small piece of ritual. These guys may not know. They are new into Freemasonry. They may think it's perfectly normal to just sit there and be almost overlooked and ignored for 5 years. What I'm saying here is don't assume that's the case. That's why involving everybody in the succession plan, in the lodge plan, is of vital importance. These guys actually represent the future of your lodge. These guys are vital in creating the profile of the lodge, of your lodge. These guys know what attracted them specifically to your lodge and why they're still there. And they will be very different to the people that joined your lodge 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. If we don't ask them, we're set in our ways. Another example of how we've got to be prepared to think differently. So now we move on to the lodge development plan. And the whole purpose about this is making sure your lodge is fit for the future. Make sure it's attractive and relevant, both to your members and to potential members. And it comprises really of a few key things. And again, you can make this as easy or as complex as you want. You can put as much detail in, or you can focus on just a small handful of things. But the process and the structure is very simple. You need to look at what your lodge is strong at. And bear in mind, Jim and John, the stewards, what you as past Masons and experienced brethren think your lodge is strong at may not be the same that Jim and John think your lodge is strong at. What you think your lodge is weak at may not be what Jim and John think. What are the opportunities that your lodge is perhaps missing because you haven't been thinking out the box? And there is no better kick up the backside to make you think out the box than COVID and looking at that ever declining graph. And what are the threats that are going to stop the viability of your lodge in the future? Some you might be able to do something about, others you've got to accept and try and prepare some way to work around them. You need to identify things that you want to stop doing, things that you want to continue doing, and more importantly, things to start doing. If I give an example of things to stop doing, there are lodges that do things that cause a lot of friction within their members. And when people ask, why do we do that? The answer is typically, it's the way we've always done it. And my answer to that is, if it's adding no value to your lodge, if it's causing distress amongst your membership, unless it's in your bylaws or to stop doing it would contravene the Book of Constitutions, what the hell are you still doing it for? Stop doing it and spend your time somewhere else. You will be amazed how many things have been done because it's been done like that since 1960. But it adds no value and it's not relevant anymore. I guess what I'm saying is prioritize what you think is important for your lodge. Not forgetting, of course, to involve Jim and John. Develop a basic action plan. But having done that plan, don't just all walk away and assume it's going to happen. Make sure you set a date to review things. Make sure you assign somebody in charge of that particular action and agree to review and monitor the progress. I've witnessed lodges get together. They've all discussed at a committee meeting, lots of wonderful things that they want to do. They've all gone home and then happily forgot about it until the next committee meeting. And lo and behold, nobody's done anything because everybody assumed somebody else was doing it. So make sure you assign an owner. And these do not have to be complicated actions. Here is an example of a strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for a lodge. And I've just put these in as examples. And I've said at the top there, I would aim at getting perhaps just 2 or 3 things in each of the boxes so that you can focus on something out, on something specific. You can always come back, and once you've knocked one of these off and you've done something about it, come back and review it and shuffle things up the list. So these are just here as examples. Excellent food, lots of socials, flexibility, the use of technology, top class standard of ritual. Your weaknesses might also be what some people perceive as a strength. You might be doing a lot for charity, but you might be engaging with 10, 20 local charities. Maybe you'd be better off and get higher visibility in the community if you focused on just 2 or 3 charities and really went all out on giving them your very best support. And bearing in mind that supporting charities doesn't always necessarily mean the giving of checks. It could be your time to help them with something. You've got a real weakness that you've got no future candidates in the pipeline, or you may be suffering with people with ill health who can't travel there anymore. Your opportunities, well, post-COVID, recruitment via socials. Socials are one of the major recruitment grounds. If you can get to a stage where that guy where a non-Mason's partner or wife is there, that she is having such a good time, instead of us having to pull the guy into Freemasonry, his wife is going to be saying to him, why aren't you a member of this? I'd like to come to one of these all the time. So instead of us pulling him, his wife's pushing him to us. That's great. And I've seen huge success with that. Let's not overload guys, particularly the younger people who are living very busy, hectic business lives. And times have changed from when you and I joined Freemasonry. Their business is in contact with them 7/24. They've got email on the move. They've got text messages on the move. They can be contacted on the move. So sharing the ritual and sharing the load across them is a way of relieving that tension and stress from them. You might want to consider approaching clubs, societies, events. You might have a business in your local group area who unfortunately has just announced 5,000 redundancies, of which inevitably there are going to be gentlemen in their 50s who are perhaps quite happy to take an early voluntary retirement, but are suddenly thinking, what on earth am I going to do with my time? A key part of your strategy might be to adopt Runway. Hopefully it will be to adopt the Runway strategy and adopt a membership pathway. Maybe you want to consider the use of Solomon for personal satisfaction for these guys to quench their thirst for knowledge. What are the threats? Biggest threat, resistance to change. I put that in 2 categories. First of all, people are set in their ways, and it's been done like that since 1960. There's also an element of what I call the yah buts. And a well-intentioned guy, probably an experienced elder member of the lodge, will say, yeah, but we tried that before. Yeah, but it didn't work. Yeah, but Province won't allow it, or Grand Lodge won't allow it. And they've got the best of intentions, but they're so fixed in their mindset that they're not prepared. They're blinkered and they're not prepared to take the blinkers off. It's our job to take the blinkers off and actually think out the box and encourage a new way of thinking. And obviously one of the major threats we've got, if you're a lodge low in membership, we've got a serious threat through the old proposer secondary route. Having done a basic strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, let's identify, try and keep it 2 or 3 things again. I put a few more examples on here to show you an example. It might be that we say, like I mentioned before, stop engaging with so many charities. Focus on a few and do a good, thorough job. You're probably going to get a much higher visibility in the community, in the local press, if you are doing more than just giving money. If you are spending time, you're supporting them. The press are going to be coming to you for the information. Try and stop recycling the same brethren to do the ritual. Every lodge has people who have their party pieces, but by breaking up the ritual and involving the other people, it's a stepping stone for the future, because the guy who is the expert on his party piece is not going to be there forever, guys. You know, we're either going to lose him to the Grand Lodge above, or for his own personal circumstances, he's not going to be able to regularly attend the lodge. So stop recycling, consider start sharing the ritual. Avoid surprises and last minute requests. I think we all hate it when you roll up at a meeting and the lodge is just about to open and you get a tap on the shoulder. Oi, our senior deacon hasn't turned up. Can you be senior deacon? Stop the surprises by doing that lodge succession plan so people will know over the next 5 years what they're going to do. There will inevitably be things that you want to continue to do. So the examples I've quoted here: continue with the family orientated socials, because it's a recruitment ground, because it involves your family, because it gives you a social purpose, and because it's a team building thing for your lodge. If it's appropriate, continue with the maximum use of technology. Many lodges have got WhatsApp group, many lodges have got their own private Facebook pages. If it's appropriate to your lodge, be flexible with the start times to suit those poor brethren who might have to travel because they've been working at the other end of the country. Continue with your committee meetings, but try and not to make the decisions exclusive just to the committee. And then the green, maximize the use of those socials to attract new members. Maybe prepare a calendar of what those events are and get it out to the non-Masons. Involving the new members in the ceremony, encouraging all members. And I'd be defeating the objective if I didn't say, hopefully one of the green things will be adopt runway and pathway. And to be quite honest, if the only thing in green was adopt runway and pathway, you're actually taking on everything that I'm trying to express to you guys here on this call. I hate forms for the sake of filling forms, but I've done this as an example. So on the left-hand side, they are things that our lodge might have decided that we want to do. And all I want to draw your attention to here is the headings across the top. Who's going to lead that? When are they going to report back on what they've done? What people, resources might they be dependent on? And let's make sure if it's completed, when was it completed? And let's have a look and say, well, having done that now, is there another step in a similar thing that we can go on and do? And the whole objective is you can put all of that I've talked about, you can actually condense it onto one sheet. So on the top there, we've got our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We've got the things that we want to stop doing, the things that we want to continue doing, and the things that we want to start doing that we're not doing today. And then there's the lodge development plan, convenient in Tom, Dick and Harry. So there's a few things that they're going to do. When are they going to do it by? Who might be able to help them with it? So the social calendar, if you've got a social committee, that's a resource to help you build and agree a social calendar. And to get that out, you will probably have, if you have regular socials, you will probably have a core of non-Masons who regularly attend. Get your social calendar out to them. They're a potential recruiting ground for our future. Runway pathway awareness. You've got a group, you've got a lodge membership officer, you've got a group membership officer, you've got a provincial membership officer. They're all there to help you. In this example, consider things like getting a younger junior member of your lodge to start learning the working tools. So come installation or come a ceremony, get him up to try and do the working tools. Encourage him now, but give him plenty of time and invite him along to the practices and the rehearsals and give him time to build his confidence up. So I'm kind of, you'll be pleased to know I'm on the home straight now. I thought I'd be a bit naive and it would be wrong of me to not give you the basics of runway and pathway. Pathway has always been considered to be a little contentious, a little bit patronizing, far too wordy. I'm not going to go through all the points or everything, but I think it's fair to say that pathway breaks down into 4 logical stages. It's about marketing. It's about being an ambassador for Freemasonry. The next big chunk is all about bringing people in, membership, growing the lodge. The next one is all about my daytime job, mentoring, making those people happy, making sure they understand what and why they're doing. And unfortunately, there is that dreaded retrieval stage. Let's not just accept the fact that people have resigned. Let's make sure we can get to the root cause of where they're resigning, because maybe there is something that we can do about it. I usually quote an example here. When I was secretary of a lodge a couple of years ago, there was a bit of a fallout between a few of the members, and I received over the course of a week 3 resignations. Now, a very efficient and effective lodge secretary would probably immediately submit those resignations. And I said to the guys, look, I've got them here. I'll put them forward if you want, but can I suggest you give it a couple of months and see if you can settle your differences? And by October, those 3 guys were back at lodge. So I could have just submitted them and accepted them, but I took the time out and gave them a chance to settle it. So what I'm saying is, sometimes we don't need to get ourselves into that retrieval. This is the final point that I'm going to mention here. Those 11 steps in the Pathway project lend themselves very nicely into 4 key stages: attracting people, retaining people, developing people, and retrieving those that we have lost. And I think at that point, I'm going to stop the share. And I'm quite happy. And I can see there's a few questions there, which I've obviously not been looking at.
I think the most of them are points which there haven't actually been that many questions come up. One of them from Rory Green, which I've just typed a brief response to, just says help, so much to take in, help. And I've pointed him in the direction of his group mentoring officer, his group membership officer, and group executive. And no doubt, Stuart, that you'll be more than willing to help if they email you direct at mentor at provinceofwestlancs.org.uk. I would point out, Stuart, presumably you're okay for these slides to be shared.
Absolutely.
And we'll do that on the email that goes out for next week's session with the recording as well. So you'll be able to have a look at the recording, but have the slides as well.
I think in addition to that, Andrew, I'll perhaps send that 1-page sample. I'll send that in an editable format in a document so that people can use that as a template if they wish.
Yeah. Got a question from Jack Boydell about the pathway of the paperwork from the lodge to the provincial office and what they want from it. Do you just want to talk about how the information is going to be used and who it should be submitted to?
Right. The decision has been, well, first of all, there are a couple of things to bear in mind. I don't think our provincial membership officer is on the call, but if he were, he would say, "Oh, is he? Oh, he might." In which case, he may want to chip in.
Hang on.
If I say anything incorrect.
I'm just trying to find him.
But one of the problems that province have at the moment is that where lodges have candidates in the pipeline, they do not necessarily know that you have those candidates in the pipeline. So part of the runway strategy will be at least to give visibility to province so that we have an overall provincial view not just of the candidates that the runway project might have pushed to your lodge, but those that you have independently developed through the proposer's secondary route. Second thing that has been predominantly agreed is that this information initially will be held at group chairman level, with summary information as required pushed up to province. Those nominated contacts, the guys that have said they're aged 18 to 30, 30 to 50 and 50 plus, if something is appropriate to a particular group, their first protocol will highly likely be to the group chairman. I've got a guy of this fit, and let's face it, a lot of the group chairman will probably know without looking at the profile what is an appropriate fit, but inevitably there will be information in that profile that might be unique to that lodge for which they are not aware. Also bear in mind that where there's an opportunity for a potential for more than one group for this candidate, the same call might be made of another group chairman. So that's where the profiles are going to stand out. So that's basically the paperwork from the lodge through the group chairman through to province.
Neil, we did have one question that came up in the chat as we went along, in terms of the information that is asked of prospective candidates and how that is collated, so how that could be matched up to the forms. Could you briefly go through what we ask candidates to, or potential inquiries, what information we take from those, just so we can try and match up with lodges? Do you mind just kind of doing a couple of minutes on that process?
Once I get the inquiry in via the United Grand Lodge or provincial websites, at the moment, I currently send them a form, and on the form, it asks for all the usual stuff, name, date of birth, address, phone number, contact details, etc. But then I go on to ask them about a belief in a supreme being. Then we ask about paying the joining fee and the subscriptions. Ask graph about how much it's likely to cost them, and are they in agreement. I ask them if they've spoken to the wife or partner about them joining, and are they in agreement. We ask them about their hobbies and their interests. Also, what they hope they're going to get out of being a member of the Freemasons, and what they're going to put in. On the form also, there's a couple of videos, links to other Masonic websites that are not Illuminati and all that kind of thing. And the Corinthian Club recently had a talk by Tony Harvey. It was premiered by the Corinthian Club. It was what he normally does at a white table event, when they have gentlemen to dine. But he did it as a talk, and it's on his YouTube channel. But it tells them more about Freemasonry without going into too much detail. So it's quite a comprehensive form, and I don't expect to get it back straight away. Sometimes I do get them straight away, and I'm really thinking then, have they read the form? Do they understand it? The other key thing that I've missed out, I usually ask about criminal convictions, and I've had to weed out 6 or 7 when I've got the form back before they've progressed any further. So the due diligence is done right at the start, and it doesn't progress any further than me into the group membership offices. I can see a couple of other questions coming up. Andrew.
Yeah.
The question there about should lodges be appointing lodge membership officers? Well, the Pathway Project does appoint a lodge membership officer, and at the September meeting of Grand Lodge, it was proposed that the lodge membership officer should be a collared office, and if your lodge does appoint a lodge membership officer, he will sit on the summons between charity steward and lodge mentor.
So just to pick up on that, that was proposed at the September meeting. It's been voted on at the December meeting, December quarterly communications, which is a very small meeting, obviously for obvious reasons, which is taking place tomorrow. The vote on that will be going ahead, and also with regards to the reduction in the joining age to 18, which brings kind of the Book of Constitutions in line with pretty much common practice, or certainly parity with what's been going on in provinces in general. Now, that doesn't mean to say that your lodge must accept people of any age. Just because the minimum age is being reduced, all it simply removes is the need to request a dispensation in order to initiate somebody under the age of 21. There will be obviously a slight change in the ritual side of things, where at the particular question that's asked at the beginning of the first degree, but it's going to be voted on tomorrow, as is the lodge membership officer as well. So all that should become official tomorrow, all things being equal. But so the lodge membership officer will be an official collared office, and it's also the case that the minimum initiation age is going to be reduced to 18. Although, like I say, that is effectively what it's been for a while, with when you take into account initiations through the university scheme or Lewis's, etc. So it's been brought into kind of parity with usual practice, as opposed to forcing people to take people at a younger age.
Can I just pick up back on the lodge membership officer?
Yep.
The lodge membership officer, in conjunction with the lodge mentor, have a huge role to play in the pathway. My concern is that a lodge shouldn't appoint somebody just for the collar, for the sake of the collar. It should be somebody who is prepared to do the work as lodge membership officer, look after the younger brethren, make sure they're looked after in conjunction with the lodge mentor. The lodge membership officer will be the person that collects the candidate from the group membership officer when the inquiries are passed across. It will be the first point of contact with the lodge, and it's very, very important role, and shouldn't just be given out just for the sake of a collar. The other thing is, there is a profile, role profile for the lodge membership officer, and if anybody wants a copy, I'll gladly send it to them by email. So if you email me, I will send it out to you, no problem at all. And somebody asked if a past conviction is a total ban on membership. No, it's not. We have a chart from Grand Lodge to work from, and we go by that chart, and we have to make the inquiries as to what the conviction was for, if there was any sentence, if there was a fine, and work it out from there. It's not a blanket no.
It's also worth pointing out that if a conviction has been spent under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, there's no requirement for it to be declared in the first place. On Form Ps or anything like that, there's no requirement for it to be declared. So I know that you are very good at dealing with those kind of inquiries, Neil. So if anybody has any questions about it, please, by all means, get in touch.
It's not an easy conversation, but we have the conversation.
Yeah. Michael Adams, you've got your hand up.
Yes, Andrew, is it worth mentioning about the proposition that is also in the Grand Lodge paper tomorrow about the unattached brethren, regarding a brother being able to visit a single lodge more than one time in any period of 12 months.
That's a proposition which it's a proposition. It's got to be voted upon at the next quarterly communications. So we'll be looking at that and communicating that out at a later date. But yes, we will be putting out more information on that. It's basically making it easier for unattached members to become more familiar with a lodge before they perhaps consider joining it, if they're moving from one area to another perhaps, or they've been out of Mason for a little while. Instead of only being able to visit a lodge once, they can visit it more than once under limited circumstances. But certainly yes, we'll be doing more communication around that towards March, when that is going to come into effect.
Very good. That's a very important point.
Thank you. I'm going to just come on to Rory Green now, if you don't mind unmuting.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi there, Rory.
Thanks for that. I was thinking that maybe it would be a useful thing for that membership officer role to be sent out to all lodges, not just at our request, but as a matter of course.
It will be available on the website at the through the membership area of the website. So yes, it will be available for people to have a look at through that. But like I said, Neil has put his email address in the chat for people to see if they want kind of a copy of it and maybe a bit more commentary alongside it. So yes, it will be distributed,
Okay.
Rory. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. The other thing was just to have a little word with Stuart Cranage. There's no such thing as quite unique. Something's either unique or...
Thank you, Rory. Very observant as always.
Thank you, Rory. Just a couple of other questions. One from David Calvert. What age a young member starts paying full subs? UGLE are continuing to offer, incidentally, Supreme Grand Chapter don't. UGLE offer a 50% discount on those up to the age of 25 years. So if they turn 25 within a subscription year, they will pay a 50% reduction. As soon as they're over 25, in the next subscription year, they will pay full whack. The province offer a 100% reduction on those up to 30 years old. So if you're turned 30 within a particular subscription year, you will then, the following year, you will pay the full provincial subscriptions. So in reality, full whack in inverted commas at the age of 30, but that's a stepped system, so that at UGLE up until the age of 25, they will pay 50% of the UGLE fees. Then between 25 and 30, they will have the 100% reduction in the provincial fees. So that's where we are. So provincial fees are free up to the age of 30, and UGLE dues are free in effect up to the age of 25. So David, the answer to your question is kind of 30, but it's in two steps. We'll cover, I mean, in terms of Chris, I'm just reading your question about previous convictions be shared with a member of the lodge. It depends what they are, and Neil, perhaps you want to come in on that point of how the Chris Lyons' point about should details of an applicant's previous convictions be shared with all members of the lodge.
Well, there is the Data Protection Act to be aware of. Just trying to find my rehabilitation of offenders chart.
It basically depends on the convictions, etc. And when they occurred.
If they've been in prison over 4 years, it's considered never spent. A custodial sentence for over 2 years and 2.5 years and up to 4 years, it's considered spent after 7 years upon completion of the sentence. A custodial sentence for over 6 months but less than 2.5 years is 4 years from the date it's considered completed. A custodial sentence of up to 6 months is 2 years from the date it's completed. For a fine, it's 1 year after the date the fine was imposed, and for an absolute discharge, there's no rehabilitation period.
Yeah.
So you can see the kind of,
I think you might be wrong on the fine bit. It matches the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act,
right, well,
but the fine bit, I think you might want to check that again.
right, well, if I'm wrong, United Ground.
So in other words, if you get done for parking, which is a parking fine.
Well, yeah, we don't usually consider.
Well, exactly. That we're going to have to look at that in detail.
Yeah, we're going to have to contact Crown Lodge to see if they've got a new.
Yeah, it's
Right,
the difference. I think it's the difference between the criminal fines and the
It's
civil fines.
it's as I say, it's covered by the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act.
I think what the questions around is really how it should be communicated to Lodge. Now, if we're talking about walk-ins, then obviously there will be it's not just a case of them being introduced to the Lodge and that's it. There is still a process of the Lodge getting to know the candidate, and indeed somebody within the Lodge, two people within the Lodge agreeing to propose and second that candidate, and as part of that, there should be the usual due diligence, in inverted commas, that should happen with any candidate. So in terms of how that is communicated to the Lodge and what it is, it's very much a case of should be. There are data protection implications with it. I think if there are any concerns, it should be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And again, your group membership officer, or you can contact us at the provincial office, and we'll be able to help you out with that in terms of how it's best communicated to the Lodge, and indeed if it needs to be at all. What we do ask for certain offences is that London are informed prior to ballot, so that if anything crops up in future, if a conviction hasn't been spent, for example, if anything crops up in future, that we are aware of it, so they wouldn't then be subject to any forthcoming Masonic disciplinary procedures if we've already been notified about it and the Grand Secretary has effectively said, yes, that's okay. So there are certain things, circumstances, if there are concerns around that in any particular issue, contact either your group membership officer or the provincial office, and you'll receive a definitive reply on that. So very much a case of case-by-case basis, I would suggest. Just in terms of there's been a question regarding whether the membership officer and the Lodge membership officer and the Lodge mentor can hold the same office. Yes, they can. You can hold more than one additional office, and the Lodge membership officer will be a membership, an additional office. Obviously, if they then hold a regular office as well, you can only hold one additional office. So you're looking at the purview of Rule 104 in the Book of Constitutions, as Dave C. properly points out. Can have a look at that in terms of what they can. Ideally, I would suggest that it's ideal for the mentor and the membership officer to be two different people. I'm looking at Stuart and Neil as Neil, you're waving at me, so presumably you want to come in on that.
There should be two different people, because if there's young brethren, say if you're doing a first degree and there's other first degree brethren in the room, the membership officer should sit amongst them, and if they've got any questions, he can answer the questions quietly in a convenient part of the ceremony as to what's going on while it's happening. If it's a second degree ceremony, the same, but if there's entered apprentices, the mentor will be sat outside with the entered apprentices, So you can't be in two places at the same time.
Sure. So constitutionally speaking, they can. However, practically speaking, they should be two separate people.
Yeah.
So that's that. I can't see any more questions or people with hands up. Anybody waving at me? So I'm well aware that there is another session tonight, and I hope that the majority of you, if not all of you, will be on the session tonight as well, at 7 o'clock. It's an important session. If you, I was asked before about what the overlap will be between content between the Hermes presentation that we had earlier in the year and the one tonight. And it will be around about 50-50 between new content and the content that's seen before. So it's very advisable for everybody to be there tonight if you are a secretary, scribe, or have any ambitions or press gang in that direction. So please, if you can join us tonight at 7 o'clock, it's the same login details as this afternoon. Please come along to that. I shall wrap up there. I'll hang around for a few minutes if there are any more questions on it. But thank you to Neil for jumping in those final questions. But Stuart, I think that has really brought your presentation to life that you've been doing with the groups, and hopefully given a good steer to people on the lodge plan. Like I said, we'll share those slides and everything like that, but hopefully by filling it in and just working through some examples on that, people have got can be much more confident when they're working with the lodge and working with the plan. So thank you for doing that.
Andrew, before everybody
Phil.
goes, I'm sure everybody would join with me in congratulating Stuart on his preferment to Senior London Grand Rank. He's just got the letter yesterday, and he will be receiving that, I think, in either March or April. So well done, Stuart. Very well deserved.
Congratulations.
Hearty congratulations.
Absolutely. You kept that quiet. Well, obviously not that quiet.
Well, we didn't know about it. I was talking to, funnily enough, I had a meeting with Stuart yesterday, and we were talking about the differences within provinces and London. And one of the subjects, as you know, my interest is in ranks, being the chairman of the ranks committee. And I was asking about London Grand Rank and Senior London Grand Rank. And he said, well, and I said, when are you likely to, you've already got London Grand Rank, when are you likely to get senior? He said, well, it's normally about between 6 and 8 years. And you've got to qualify, obviously, with what you've done. So I said, when do they come out? Oh, he said, I don't really know. And of course, he went home and the letter was on his doorstep.
Well, congratulations.
So very well done, Stuart. I'm absolutely thrilled to it. And, you know, for the work you do, both here and in London, and in fact, with the Membership Working Party in London, it's very much appreciated and is certainly very, very well deserved.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, Phil, thanks, but I think I'm going to have to get my door. I'm going to have to get my door widened now to get my head through.
Yeah, it's well deserved. Very well deserved.
Thank you, Phil. So thank you, Stuart, and I shall see you all later on today at 7 o'clock. Like I say, same login details, and we'll see you all then.